it is. It's just that time's moving quickly. And uh-huh. Really? Okay. Well, it's not a bad thing because, I think of like my daughter turns in on the Christmas music when they first started, like right after Thanksgiving and all that. So, what's the station that does the early Christmas music? And they do it for. Are more of them doing it these days? Well, it used to be only one station that did that, you know. So, but yeah, it's nice. I don't like to jump into it too early because it just seems like everything's moved up too quick. Like with Christmas shopping and things like that. It's like, oh well, and the other thing is I don't want to miss Thanksgiving. You know. Thanks, Bob. I always feel like we don't give Thanksgiving enough credit. You know. She did. She did. No, I did not. She did. Oh, she's done with it now, but probably, yeah, probably Sunday was when she got hers. Yeah, but yeah, I think she was just finishing up things and trying to, stay away. I really thought we had both missed it, and to the best of my knowledge, I have missed it. So um, I have felt okay. Probably so. Probably so. Um, like I said, the good thing about if there's anything good about coming out of COVID is we have masks and hand sanitizer and all that stuff around the house, wipes, and so man, we've Lysoled about everything we got. And my wife, I think she probably catches a little bit of grief for um, wearing a mask still a lot. And she'll go to home patient's house and wear a mask, and they're like, "Oh, you don't have to wear a mask." No, no, I'm good, thank you. And so she'll still wear a mask, and it's like she hadn't been sick in like until this, and this family brought it into her, but she hadn't been sick in like a couple of years now, because since COVID. I, it's one of those things. I don't know if the baby tells you they've got it or not, but mom and dad sure had it, and mom's feeding her, and so. But I don't think she. Yeah, but those diapers pretty runny anyway. I didn't have it. Oh, they were? Yeah, yeah. Had it was thrown up. Yeah, I don't know, but she was being taken care of by parents that had it, and it's hard to see them. You would think. I know. Well, sometimes they've got the best immune system, you know. I think he was teasing her out saying, "I'll be back in 30 minutes" or something, but man, all the important people are coming in here. That's right. Hey, I'm preaching to the choir today. That's what I'm doing tonight. So. Oh man, you are good people. I can attest to that. I've seen your goodness manifest in many ways, all of you. Oh, we had an interesting occurrence at our office on Monday. We had a lady come in and apply for a job, and she wasn't really applying for a job. She was, her boyfriend had brought her in, and he was abusing her, beating her. So she went into the bathroom and called 911, and when everybody showed up, the cops showed up and everything, she showed the bruises and everything, and our office manager, who I'm just so impressed with, and I told her, you know, it's people that just bring the presence of God with them and do things, and you know, I don't know anything about her church background, anything like that, but the way she treated that young lady was just incredible. She went back and told her that you can do this, you've got this. This person isn't going to hurt you anymore. You know, it gets down to kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Your first need is safety, food, water, shelter. And she gave her some Cheez-Its and gave her some water and told her that she was going to be safe. And she says, I don't know if, you know, if I can do this. She says, you've already done it. You've done the hard part. You've called and you're, you know, and let's get you on the right road, you know.
So is this the guy?
He was in the parking lot. He had
He thought she was going to do the job.
yeah, but they had just met like about a month ago at a wedding, and they had been together probably for about 2 weeks. Had been started the abuse, and she was just black and blue, sound like on the, you know, when you lifted up the shirt, you saw the bruises and everything, and so and one of the things I was there on Monday, but I didn't find out about all the stuff that was going on. I heard the stories today, but they said I came into the office and the doors were locked, and I think they had locked the doors in case, you know, somebody came back or something like that. So, but yeah, it was right, exactly, and. Right, you can't. Well, I guess he had moved in with her in the short amount of time that they had been together, and she had a baby, and the child was out in the car with him, and so she's worried about her kid more than anything else, but she had to get a place where she could call and, you know, and another thing too, you know, the police that came out were two males, which, you know, it's good to have, you know, but she needed a woman's voice to tell her, to empower her, to tell her that she was doing the right things and that this is good, this is what you need to do. And
And if she doesn't live in the same place, she can apply for a PPO
yeah.
and be in an area where he could not get that. So that they would, if she would apply for those types of things, then they could do
Well,
something.
my office manager, you know, was very good with her and told her all the right things and just affirmed what she was doing, trying to help her out. If a guy had been there, I don't know if it had carried the same weight that it had talking woman to woman with her. And we talked about this too. So many times in life, you have these opportunities. And we've probably all had these opportunities, maybe even once in a life opportunity, that you're put in a situation where you can help or you can do something. And do you stand up and do the right thing? Do you just kind of pass her on to the next, or do you go in and actually help and, you know, really do stuff? And Ronell really, I was so proud of what she did. But we are not allowed always to see the harvest. Sometimes we are allowed to plant the seed. Sometimes we are allowed to water the plant, but sometimes we're not allowed to see the harvest. And that's one of the hardest things in the world. You do something, you want to see how things turn out. You're invested, but God just says, no, I gave you an opportunity to do some work here, and you're going to have to just, you know, pray that the best works out, you know. And that's how life is so many times. You know, you see those things from the sideline, and you just you wish you could follow it all the way through, but you know we probably won't. You know, do what you can while you have an opportunity, and then move on. But to be aware of the opportunities that God puts in front of you to do good. You know. Yeah, and it just kind of struck me because I know this month we're studying kind of women in the genealogy and the bloodline, and you know, and they've been you know, different women in different circumstances and things, but you know, here's my office manager that just went, kind of got down underneath the sink where she was hiding in the bathroom, crawled down underneath with her, and just talked to her like a human being and said, you know, you got this. You can do this. You know, you're doing the right thing. Yep, yep. And yep, got the baby and arrested the guy, and yeah. So, and you know, if you hope that helps her in her situation, but you also hope that it maybe stops other situations from happening. You know. Hopefully some of those behaviors can change, you know, but I don't know. We fight those battles all the time, you know, that stuff never goes away, you know, but we try to do what we can while we're there. So, golly, I said we're going to finish up the last flag tonight. We're going to do that and look a little bit about Passover. And, you know, Passover is such an interesting time, and modern day Passover and how it's observed and things like that. You know, sometimes when we see the hard places in Scripture where it seems like God's being mean or God's being really tough or, you know, judgmental on a group of people or whatever, you know, sometimes we're like, yeah, well, you know, what we struggle with, you know, is God being just here to people that, you know, weren't necessarily his people, and the firstborn of all Egypt would die. And, you know, that's sometimes in our modern day minds we have problems with some of those things. And, you know, is God being just? Yes. Is he being merciful? Yes. You know, is it when we look at it through our eyes, we kind of have a struggle with it, because it kind of like you remember the parable where Jesus talks about the workers, and they all show up at different times through the day, and some are given, you know, everybody's given the same wage. You know, is that fair? Well, in our eyes, that might not be fair. But if you're the owner of the business, and you can pay anybody what you want to pay them, so. And they agreed to it, yeah. So it's not, you know, but I understand the concept of that. You know, hey, you know, if it's your siblings, you know, hey, it's not fair that, you know, John got this and I didn't get this, you know, that kind of thing. But still, you want things to be fair, and I think our problem lies more is are we looking at God through our eyes and our system of judgment, our system of mercy? I think a good part of my life I've kind of looked at mercy so strongly and not looked at justice as strongly. And yet, for those that have been deprived of justice, you realize how important justice is. You know, we can go into, well, Jesus was forgiving and merciful and things, but we got to remember that justice is very important if you've been denied justice. And with that being said, looking at the concept of the Exodus and redemption and this theme of the Exodus, the being coming away out of slavery is such a big thing to many in the social justice world. You know, if you talk about slavery in America and the African American black culture, this is a huge thing that runs throughout their culture because it resonates. You look at the Holocaust. If you were a Holocaust, if you were in a camp, and you remember the old stories of Passover that you were locked up, and that one day God would eventually bring you out of that time of bondage. You know, how important would those stories be to you? That you know, how much would that resonate with you if you were in that position? You know, this is a story of hope. You know, it's a story that gives people something to hold on to. You know, when you think that nothing is ever going to change, and to say that no, it might take a long time, and God's timing is different from our timing, that I have hope that maybe not my generation or the next generation, but things will get better. Things will eventually, you know, come out in the wash, and things will be like it should be. So I've thought those things a lot about the civil rights issues. You know, we've gone through a lot of the things that we've seen with Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Gardner in New York, and things like that. I think, man, have we come, you know, anywhere? Have we made any progress at all? And I have to look back and say, yeah, we're moving the football a little bit. It might not be as far as I want to move it right this time, but we're moving the football, you know, and hopefully things are you know, improving over time, you know, kind of seeing that a little bit. So anyway, I guess we'll save some prayer time to the end. Chapter 11 starts with the last plague, and these have been, like we've talked about, they've been progressive through the beginning of the start of the plagues. They were about 9 months in the time that when they first started to the last of the plagues, and we could see this in the throughout the progression of the plagues. This plague is kind of like, this is the birth of the nation in here. This is the beginning of Israel as coming out of Egypt and the start of their nation, if you will. Even God even kind of changes the calendar for them and says, this is going to be the month of Abib or Aviv or Nisan. It's going to be the first month of the Jewish calendar. And so it's in the springtime. It's right there in April, and it's going to be the first month of their calendar. So just kind of go down, open things up in verse 11. Like I said, let me read, and it'll be out the message. God said to Moses, I'm going to hit Pharaoh in Egypt one final time. So this is it. This is culmination of everything. And then he will let you go. When he releases you, that will be the end of Egypt for you. He won't be able to get rid of you fast enough. So here's what you to do. Tell the people to ask each man from his neighbor and each woman from her neighbor for things made of silver and gold. Now, when they're talking about asking neighbors, they're talking about asking the Egyptians. They're not borrowing things from each other, but they're talking about taking things from the Egyptians. God saw to it that the Egyptians liked the people. Also, Moses was greatly admired by the Egyptians, a respected public figure among Pharaoh's servants and the people at large. So, you know, you think about all these plagues and everything that was happening. politically, who are you holding accountable for this? I could see very easily that they would think, well, Moses is to blame. He's the one that brought all these bad things to happen to our people and the culture and everything. They're not really holding Moses accountable. This isn't Moses' fault. He's given Pharaoh a pretty fair shake at this, giving Pharaoh the opportunity to address this, but Pharaoh keeps going back. He keeps recanting, he keeps going back on his word. And so I think the people here, from what this is suggesting, is that it's not Moses that they're blaming for all the plagues. It's Pharaoh that they're blaming for all the plagues. He's catching all the political flack, if you will. And, it's from everybody. It's from his own people. He's losing a lot of political cred here, even though he is the king. Then Moses confronted Pharaoh, God's message. At midnight, I will go through Egypt, and every firstborn child in Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl working at her hand mill or grinding up the grain and stone. Also the firstborn of the animals, widespread wailing will erupt over the country, lament, crying such as has never been and never will be again. But against the Israelites, man, woman, or animal, there won't be as much as a dog bark, so that you'll know that God makes a clear distinction between Egypt and Israel. Now, I was kind of curious about this. I think, in my reading of other translations and things, I always grew up that was firstborn male. Do you think that? Let me get your ideas, because I've tried to look this up and find different things. What's your take on this? Is firstborn child or firstborn male? It says firstborn son in that translation? Yeah. See, I always thought it's firstborn male too. So in message talks about firstborn child, and in the NIV, I've came across. I did a little bit of reading of some Jewish feminists that kind of wrote about some of these things, and there was a little bit unclear. I think traditionally we have seen it as firstborn male, but regardless of firstborn son or the firstborn of children, do you realize if you put the numbers to that, how many people that would be? There would not be a household in Egypt that wasn't affected by this. Not one household. There you go. That's right. Or I thought about this too. Maybe this is where my mind's getting a little weird. What if your husband went out and messed around with somebody, had a son, and so your family, he's not the firstborn son? Does that make sense? Of the slave girl, yeah. So, families are all different. There's all kinds of weird dynamics within families, But it did talk about, the firstborn of all the Egyptians. And when you think about even with it being male, of all the different generations, it doesn't say it's just this one generation. If it's, if your grandfather was the firstborn, if your father was the firstborn, could you have lost your grandfather, your father, and your son, and your grandson? Could you have lost 4 people in your family because they were all firstborn males? I mean, this was all encompassing. There's and when God talks about the lament and the cry of the land, that kind of devastation. I think as Americans sometimes we're not as demonstrative with our grief. But have you seen those places where some catastrophes or things have happened overseas, or they've happened like in the Middle East or something, and you see people just crying in the streets like a bomb goes off, and just this mass destruction, mass taking of human life, and you just see the weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth of people that are just mourning from their soul of what this, what that would be like. Like I said, I think we kind of do that stiff upper lip, try not to be too, mournful about things, but I couldn't even imagine what that kind of devastation would be like. We've already seen a lot of devastation within these plagues, and they've been, economic in nature. They've affected, relationships, food supplies, all these other things. But the loss of life in this is just, it's just horrific. It's just tremendous, And like I said, can you imagine losing maybe 4 people in your family at one time? It's just hard to believe. And then God's preparing them, and it goes into faith, how we talk about them being ready to go, the immediacy of their, I want you prepared, I want you ready to go immediately. You got to get out, because we've already seen Pharaoh change his mind before. You got to get out. We got to get you on the road. But not even that. It's more about, I want you to understand why I'm telling you. I want you to have faith. Faith that this is going to happen. Faith that you're going to take the lamb and place the blood over the doorway. Faith that you're going to be ready to go. That your sandals are on your feet. You're going to be ready to go. That, that's the faith that I want to see you exercise your faith and be ready when I call. So, then all these servants of yours will grovel before me, begging me to leave. Leave, you and all the people who follow you, and I will most certainly leave. Moses, seething with anger, left Pharaoh. God said to Moses, Pharaoh's not going to listen to a thing you say, so that the signs of my presence and work are going to multiply in the land of Egypt. And Moses and Aaron had performed all these signs in Pharaoh's presence, but God turned Pharaoh more stubborn than ever, and yet again he refused to let the Israelites go. In 12:1, it talks about this as being the first month, Nisan, addressed the whole community. Each man is to take a lamb from his family, 1 lamb from his household. Now, when he talks about lamb here, it's not just, it's not what we think of as just a lamb. A lamb was kind of generic for both goats and sheep. And so it's like you take a unblemished goat or sheep. And it even kind of explains that here in just a few verses. If the family is too small for a lamb, then share it with a close neighbor, depending on the number of persons involved. They said that probably the rabbis said that maybe like a lamb would feed maybe 10 to 20 people. And so, that was important. The way it was cooked was important. Be mindful of how much each person eats. Don't get a big lamb for just a few people. You want to prepare the proper amount of food for the right amount of people. Don't be wasteful about this. After it's done, you're going to have to burn off the remaining parts of the lamb or the goat. You're going to need to, when you roast it from head to tail with everything in between. Don't cut out the entrails. Roast the entire animal itself, and eat everything. And what you don't eat in the morning, make sure you destroy it with fire. The entire community was to do this at dusk. Then take some of the blood and smear it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel on the houses in which you will eat. You are to eat the meat roasted in the fire that night, along with bread made without yeast. Yeast in the Bible is never, ever a good thing. And I was trying to understand that, because I always thought yeast is a good thing. It makes bread rise, tastes good, things like that. But yeast was never a good thing. And I think part of that is if you Well, two things that signifies. If you make the bread without yeast, you're not waiting for it to rise. That was one of the significance here too. This is the immediacy of getting out there was so important to God that he impressed this upon them. So when you make the bread, make it with unleavened bread. Now I've had, we've done communion in many different ways. And communion is, similar in some ways to Passover. And we take this and we talk about the bread being unleavened. Now, I know at times, I think we've probably taken unleavened bread here, Huh? Not often, but at times we have. And I know at times we've taken, we do our Sunday sunrise service at Easter where we have grapes and crackers, oyster crackers. It's symbolic for us. That's important, the symbolism of it, the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the drink, the cup. It symbolizes something for us, and that's relevant. But I've had places as a chaplain. I've gone out to see some patients, and I've got a friend of mine out in Tuttle, and I'll call him up. I say, "Hey Todd, I'm going to give communion to somebody out there, and I'm out of bread. Could I stop by and get some from you? Do you have some communion wafers or anything?" And so I stopped by one time, and he says, "Yeah, we've got a man in our church that makes unleavened bread." So he would make this bread that it's a little flat bread, doesn't rise or anything, and it's kind of interesting. He intentionally makes it the way that it was made back then, And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I don't think I have to have it that way, but it was kind of neat to experience it that way, But it was important not to have any yeast. Every time you come across yeast in the Bible, it's representative of sin. It is representative of sin. And so take the unblemished animal, the unblemished goat or lamb, and without any kind of blemish whatsoever, and take the bread without yeast. And also bitter herbs, the bitterness, of what you're coming out of here. Don't eat any of it raw or boiled in water. Make sure that it's roasted, the whole animal. Don't leave of it till morning. If there's leftovers, burn them in the fire. And here's how you are to eat it. Be fully dressed and with your sandals on and your stick in your hand. Eat it in a hurry. It is the Passover to God. It's almost like this is the well-prepared, well-thought-out first fast food. It's like you're going to eat it on the run. You're going to eat it on your way out of Egypt. I will go throughout the land of Egypt on this night and strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, whether human or animal, and bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am God. The blood will serve as a sign on the house where you live. Where I see the blood, I will pass over you. No disaster will touch you when I strike the land of Egypt. So again, go back. What is this harsh? It is harsh. Yes. That's true. It's like somebody talked about the, taking the gold and silver from the Egyptians and things. Well, why would God, steal from? Well, it's kind of 430 years of severance pay, if you will. Kind of a way to make up for, what's been happening. Well, the way it's the way it's explained is that they were kind of favorably looked at upon, and they had told them to ask for it, So, and they were gracious in giving those things away. Yeah.
So that's why they have the silver and gold and the gold.
You know, and think about some of the things, how that stuff might have been used throughout the years. That here's these treasures that came out of Egypt, and now they're in the breastplates, and they're in they're used in the gold and stuff. They're all these jewels are embedded into things that they're using in life years and years down the road, you know. And these are all treasures that came out of Egypt that they had. Yeah. You know, and it's funny, it's kind of like, if you think about the golden calf wasn't that they were worshiping a calf, they were worshiping what a calf represented. The calf, again, going back to, there were a couple of different gods that had a bull as their god, that the bull represented their god. Apis was the main one. You know, when they worshipped Apis, they weren't worshiping the calf per se, or the bull itself. They were representing what it stood for. It stood for strength. You know, they were in the wilderness, and they were losing hope. Moses had been gone for a while. What kind of God do we need? We need a God of strength. We don't need a weak God. We don't need a God that's going to take us out here and leave us in the wilderness. We need a bull God. We need a strong God that's going to lead us into the future, that can, you know, is strong enough to defend us and take us into, you know, to these places and protect us. You know, if you want to put it modern days, we have icons, you know, and I know a lot of different churches have icons, and we don't worship the icon, but we understand what the icon represents. Like in our church, it's like a cross. We don't worship a cross, nor would we worship a guillotine. We wouldn't worship something that represents the way that people die. We don't worship the cross. We worship Jesus who died on the cross, and that cross reminds us of who Jesus was. And that's the same thing with the golden calf. It wasn't that they were worshiping the golden calf. They were worshiping the God behind the golden calf. And that was what was offensive to God more than anything else. You've not only left me, it's not that they kind of go hand in hand. The idol, don't have any other gods before me, but also don't worship any idols. That's how those two tie together. Don't worship that God, but also don't make that idol that makes you want to worship that God. I don't have an idol before me. You worship me. There's not an idol before me. Now, there are circumstances where I think when their faith was down, like when Moses was told to hold up the serpent in the wilderness, and for all that could see that, you know, that they would be healed. But other than that, you know, you don't worship the idol. You don't worship the imagery, you know. So it wasn't about the bull. It was about the God behind it, you know. And all of these plagues, we've talked about this before, all of these plagues had to do with God showing his power over these Egyptian gods and the impotence of these gods, you know. You know, the plague 9 talks about the darkness. Egypt is a very bright land. There is a lot of sun in Egypt. The temperature there gets up to like 115. It's very warm there. There's sun there all the time. And when you talk about a darkness that covers the entire land, you know, that's pretty drastic. And who was the god of the sun? You know, one of the chief gods of the Egyptian pantheon was the god Ra, the sun god. And so when you have darkness over the entire land, God's saying, you know, Ra's not that powerful. You know, I'm Yahweh, and I'm, you know, these Egyptian gods aren't that powerful. And I want my people to know that. But I'm proving this not only to my people, but I'm proving it to the Egyptian people and to Pharaoh too. Yeah. It was. So in 12, they take the Passover and they head out. And one of the things I've said before was, you know, they didn't just head straight back. They didn't head down. There were two main roads that kind of ran up through Egypt, and they met up in Damascus. And it was I think it's called the King's Highway, maybe is one of them. And then there was the Via Maris, the way of the sea that went up by the Mediterranean up there. And they kind of ran, you know, side by side. But that wasn't where God had sent them. You know, they were led kind of out into the desert area. And, you know, part of that, I know we go back to, you know, well, Moses struck the rock and the differences are the reason why, you know, with him striking the rock, with them going that direction, being in the wilderness for so long. But also, I think you have to look at that, I think I've mentioned this before, that if they go on those main highways, they're really sitting ducks. There are a lot of people out there with no way really of defending themselves other than the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, which are one, and which there's reason to believe that that's like the incarnate Christ. You know, that is defending them, protecting them where they're at. But other than that, yeah, they weren't, they didn't take the fastest path back to the promised land for sure. Yeah. So, but that was probably a good thing. I got about 4 till. Any questions? Anything anybody's curious about in the stories? Anything? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah. Right. Or you're left alone. You're out there by yourself in the middle of nowhere, and you know, being alone's a scary place. I believe in you, but I'm gonna make provision. You know, kind of like when Pharaoh says, you know, hey, I pray to my gods, but ask your God to bless me too. You know. Yeah, it's not going to hurt. You know, I'll pray, you know, I don't care which God we pray to. I'm going to pray to one of them, you know. Need a little help along the way. Yeah. 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 I think God was very specific to his people about, you know, leading them out. And like I said, the immediacy, pack your bags, be ready to go. And even today, it makes me wonder, are we kind of like that? Are we, you know, are we ready to go at any time? If the Lord were to call us home, are we, you know, we got our sandals on and we're ready to go, or would we be got flat-footed? Would we be caught, you know, oh Lord, I didn't know you were going to call me home so quick, you know? So I hope that we live our lives in a way that no matter where we're at, we're ready for that time to come. We're ready for the opportunities that are ahead of us. Think about my friend that, like I said this last week. You know, You never know when those opportunities are going to pop up for you to do something heroic. But just like Matthew 25, Jesus talked about the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. You don't want to be caught off guard. You want to be prepared. You know, when that time comes, you want to be prepared. And I think that's kind of the theme of where Yahweh was going with his people. Be ready to go. Be ready for the next step. So anyway, before we go, let's see. Do we have any prayer requests? Anyone? I always think the 2 things I think of often is, who could use prayers today, and what am I thankful for? I know there's all kinds of different prayers, but what am I asking God for, and what am I being thankful for? Those are 2 things that I always think are important, and I never want a time to be that I'm not very thankful. And I know sometimes we say the same things over. Well, I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for good life and things like that. But even the small details in life, just thankful for the people that are around you, or the person you ran into at the grocery store today. What are those blessings come great and small, and it's so neat to see those blessings throughout our lives, throughout our day. Then the other thing is, and it's the same thing with the requests that we put before God. We can ask God for great things, and we can ask God for small things. Help me get to sleep tonight, Lord. Lord, help me through a dire financial situation, or help me with my relationship I have with my mom or my spouse, or bigger picture things. We could take everything to God, and I think that means a lot. So, well, that being said, let's pray. Lord, we love you, and we thank you for your goodness and your grace, and we thank you that you are approachable, and yet you are holy and set apart, and you are with us, but you are not one of us. You are holy. And to know that we serve a God that has those dynamics that can be in the smallest part of our soul and can be in the largest part of the world at large. It's a great thought. Thank you for this time of Advent, the time of looking forward to the Savior, time of looking forward to what is to come, and know that you have great things for us and in store for us. I ask your blessings upon all of our people, and pray that our hearts might be in tune with you, that we might see opportunities in front of us as they present themselves. And in everything, Lord, we give you our praise and thanksgiving. Amen. Thank you, guys.